1 year from right now, what exactly is the NBA going to look like in 2023? Those predictions are what we're going to be talking about in today's video. And we're going to begin with a big one. 1 year from right now, I think we're going to be going into LeBron's final season as a Laker. He'll be a Laker this year, and he'll be a Laker in the 2023 season. And then after that, I think he's going to leave, at least very heavily explore the option of leaving. So he signed the extension. He has the option to opt out. And I think it's something he's really going to explore for a couple different reasons. One, at a certain point, he's going to see that the future of this Lakers roster isn't that great. No matter, even if, they win 50 games this year or something, they're not true contenders. They don't have the kind of depth that you need. The guard situation on the roster is really bad. AD, you don't know what his future is going to be like. And if Bronny is going to show up to the league in 2024, I really do believe that LeBron is just going to go wherever Bronny gets drafted. And assuming that's not LA, he's going to end up somewhere else and he's going to bounce around. It's what he does. And I don't really blame him for that. Whether it be for a better basketball situation if Bronny doesn't show up in 2024, or if it is to go and play with his kid, I think we're going to be looking at a situation where a year from right now, we're going into LeBron's final season as a Laker. And it's weird because in the past, whenever we've thought about LeBron leaving, we kind of knew where he was going to go. Like I thought that he was going to go to LA when he went to LA. Him going back to Cleveland made sense. The Miami thing made sense. And right now, there's really no way to predict where he could possibly go because I really don't think he's going to care that much about getting this like huge max contract. So that puts pretty much any team on the table, and especially if there's a team out there that's willing to draft Bronny higher than maybe he should in order to secure LeBron signing with their team. It's going to be a very, very weird offseason, a couple of off seasons from now. And I think that's a very realistic prediction for 2023. Next up now, some actual basketball stuff here. I think a year from now, we're going to be looking at the New Orleans Pelicans as real legit NBA title contenders. I think they're going to have a very good season this year, assuming that everybody's healthy. I think they have one of, if not the most talented young rosters in the entire league. And I don't know that they're going to make the conference finals or the finals or anything, but this feels like the year away from being that team year for me, for New Orleans, where Zion's awesome, Brandon Ingram's awesome. They have CJ, they have these veterans, they have two-way players, they have depth, they have bigs, they have guards, they have wings, they have everything you could possibly need. And all they need now is a little bit of seasoning. They need to play together a little bit. They need to have a little bit of chemistry and a little bit of continuity. And in terms of the future of the roster, like everybody's locked in, everybody's signed. There's no big free agency question coming up. They're going to be seen, I think, a year from right now as one of the best teams in the league, one of the most true contenders in the league, certainly from a talent perspective. And the only way that wouldn't happen is if they have injury issues with Zion or other guys on the roster this year and they aren't that successful this year, or if I'm just completely misjudging the talent that they have. But given how they looked in the postseason last year and for parts of last year, even without Zion and with that CJ addition as well, maybe I'm overvaluing them, but I really see them as true contenders 1 year from right now. Back to some free agency stuff now. I think a year from now, we're going to be hearing some really interesting Jalen Brown rumors. Now, that's not to say that I think Jalen Brown is going to leave Boston, and to be clear, he can't leave next offseason. It would be in 2024. But we've talked about this in a previous Kevin Durant video. There's no situation in which Jalen Brown doesn't go to unrestricted free agency because of the way that the rules work. He didn't sign a max with Boston initially. It was slightly less than the max, and as a result of that, if he signs an extension rather than going into free agency and getting a brand new contract, he won't be able to sign for the full max and as much as he would be able to in free agency. And so there's no scenario from a money perspective that it makes any sense for Jalen Brown to not go all the way until 2024 free agency. And given what we know about Jalen Brown and the fact that I think he definitely would openly explore his options, I don't think he's just going to be blindly loyal to Boston. That's just going to create some uncertainty, whether you think he's actually going to leave or not, whether Boston would actually be concerned about him leaving. A player of that caliber not signing an extension, and for it to not make any sense whatsoever for them to sign the extension, to go all the way to unrestricted free agency is going to cause some tension. And this is a team that we've seen in the past, even though the last half of last year and obviously into the playoffs, into the finals went really, really well, they haven't always dealt with tension well. And so if something like that occurs, I think those rumors about Jalen Brown to Atlanta or LA or whatever the case may be, those are going to get much, much louder. I think he's a 2024 max player for sure, assuming that he's healthy by that point. I think it's something that is going to be a really interesting thing to watch, especially given kind of the circumstances around the Kevin Durant stuff this past offseason. Speaking of Kevin Durant, the Brooklyn Nets, maybe this is me being hopeful. If you want to clown me for this, that's fine. I think the Nets are going to be fine. this time next year. Now, there's some caveats to that. I'm not necessarily saying that they're going to be, contenders or that they're going to be seen as one of the best teams in the league. But if you think about the situation that the Nets are in right now and what led to Kevin Durant requesting a trade in the first place and then ultimately backing off the trade request, what is going to be different about this offseason in which he didn't get traded next offseason to allow him to then get moved? You know what I mean? So are the Nets going to be worse this year than they were last year? They were barely a playoff team last year. I can't imagine they're going to be worse, assuming guys are healthy. Kevin Durant's contract is not going to be any easier to move next offseason. He's still going to have 3 years on his deal a year from now, and he's going to be 35 rather than 34. So it's not like there's going to be all these teams jumping over each other, continually bumping up their offers to where Brooklyn wants it to be in order to go and get Kevin Durant. And assuming that Kyrie's there and Simmons is there and KD is healthy, they're still going to be a good basketball team. So I don't really see a situation where a year from now this blows up any more than it did this offseason. And they didn't trade him this offseason either. They have set the bar for what they want in exchange for Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant signed a long-term extension a year ago, and that extension is still going to have a significant amount of years left on it a year from right now. And so you can convince me otherwise or attempt to in the comments if you'd like to, but someone explain to me how next offseason a year from now is going to be different than this one in which he didn't get traded in a way that is then going to allow him to be traded in 2023. Next up, some more free agency stuff. So every single time that there is, a big star that gets moved, for example, James Harden, we're then going to look at who's the next guy that's going to be unhappy and ask out. And it was Kevin Durant, and then it was Donovan Mitchell. And now that we have those guys established, we're trying to figure out who the next player is going to be. And I think LaMelo is a real candidate for this. And that's my prediction a year from now, is that I think those rumors about him wanting out of Charlotte are going to get very, very loud a year from right now. Now, granted, it's a different situation because he's on a rookie contract. He's a restricted free agent. And we just saw in Zion's case, if you put a max contract in front of a guy that hasn't signed one yet in the NBA, it's going to be tough for them to turn that down and actively look at exploring their options as an unrestricted free agent and give up, $30 million in a year, especially given, the new TV rights deal and stuff that's coming in soon that's going to raise player salaries. However, if there's a single player and a family in the league that would circumvent those rules and try and go against the norms and try and use the power that LaMelo has as one of the better young players in the league to get to a better situation earlier than anyone else ever has, I feel like the Ball family and LaMelo is at the top of that list. And so I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now we're getting those Zion level rumors about how he doesn't want to be in Charlotte. I don't think he wanted to be in Charlotte in the first place, and how the team has been really bad and they haven't been able to put anything around him. And he's been good. He's been an all-star caliber player, but the team itself is really bad. And I think there'd be a lot of interest around the league in LaMelo if he requested a trade. And I think that there would be a lot of pressure on Charlotte to get something out of him, because the threat of him becoming an unrestricted free agent by signing that qualifying offer, I think would be real. And I think those rumors are going to start happening a year from now, because I don't think Charlotte's going to be any good this year. They just don't have talent on the roster. Miles Bridges is not going to be on the roster. They didn't improve in any real significant way. And unless we have finally a fully healthy Gordon Hayward season, which seems unlikely, this is a 30-something win team at absolute best. And so then all those rumors start swirling about, well, what's happening with LaMelo? Are they going to trade him? Is he going to ask out? I think all that stuff is going to start a year from now. Next up now, a championship prediction, actual basketball stuff. I think a year from now, we're going to be looking at the Milwaukee Bucks as NBA champions, because I really do believe that as good as Boston and as good as Golden State were last year in the playoffs, if Chris Middleton was healthy, I think Milwaukee would have won the title this year. And their roster is not any different. They've still got all their veterans. They've still got Giannis. And I don't see a team, except for maybe the Clippers, that has really kind of catapulted themselves towards the top of where Milwaukee was when they won the title against Phoenix a year ago or 2 years ago. And now you get to, you'd have to count on the Clippers being really healthy to really consider them as a part of that conversation. So for me, when I look at the landscape, the safest bet by far to be champions this season would be Milwaukee, and then maybe Golden State underneath that if you really believe in their championship run from last year. And for me, it's Giannis in his prime, still an MVP caliber guy, Middleton and Holiday healthy, and the rest of that roster just fits really, really well around the pieces that they have. And the downside to that would be if Chris Middleton or Drew Holiday gets hurt again. Those guys are getting older, and I think if we're looking at 2 years from now, there could be some significant roster shakeups happening with Milwaukee, given the fact that those guys are getting older. But if you're asking me to predict right now, a year from now, who's coming off of a championship parade, I would say that it would be Milwaukee. And then last up now, this is kind of a bonus one. I don't really want to put this one in the actual part of the video because it's such a bold prediction. But what about Chris Paul not being a member of the Phoenix Suns a year from now? So the case for this would be one of two things. Either this season goes really poorly, Chris Paul's hurt the entire season, and they just wanted to either like stretch the contract or waive him or salary dump him somewhere else and try and move on, as they're dealing with an ownership situation and a salary situation that is very, strained, especially now with having DeAndre Ayton on this huge contract. Or the real possibility that this is just Chris Paul's last season in general, that he retires. I know that he signed the contract a couple of years ago when it runs for a few more seasons, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I feel like there's so many scenarios this year in which Phoenix season goes poorly, especially as it relates to Chris Paul's health, and any kind of negative Chris Paul stuff, whether it be holding back Phoenix or being hurt or looking old or not being good in the playoffs, all that I think leads to a conclusion of him not being a member of Phoenix next year, whether that be retiring or whether that being moved or waived or whatever the case may be. If you're asking me for my boldest prediction for the NBA in 2023, 1 year from right now, I would say that it would be that Chris Paul is no longer a member of the Phoenix Suns. Now, they could have an awesome season. They could win 60 games again. Paul could be healthy in the postseason. They could make the finals, and that honestly would not surprise me. But I believe in momentum when it comes to roster building and chemistry and construction around a team. And last year was their momentum year. Like, going into last year, they had made the finals. They clearly put the pedal to the metal in the regular season. They were fantastic, and they fell apart in a game 7. And all that momentum is now gone, and it feels like a team that was on the up and up and missed their 2-year window. And they made the finals 2 years ago. They arguably should have made it last year, and now they're just kind of on a downhill slope. And I think that matters, especially when you have an aging player, an injury-riddled player, and a guy that could potentially be considering retirement. And I think all that could lead to this being Chris Paul's last year on the Suns. But speaking of bold predictions, let me know down in the comment section below what your boldest prediction for this upcoming NBA season is, what the league is going to look like 1 year from right now in 2023. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.